have to master to be successful as a founder. And it's very exciting to share this with you. I love what I do as well. By the way, you can attend any of our community events for free. You'll find that our free training is better than most of the things that you can pay for. Hopefully, you'll feel that way after today as well. We have Authentic Marketing coming up on April 8th. And then the Conscious Business Forecast was so popular, we're going to be doing that again on April 14th. And that is going to talk about where the world is going. Why is there so much conflict? Why is this the absolute best time to be building a business that makes the world better? So what Shiftco does is we train conscious founders how to grow their business and maximize their impact. To date, 85.7% of our members have doubled their business. If they're in the 0 to 10, that usually happens 6 to 9 months. If they're above 10K, 10 to 30K, it usually takes about a year to 18 months. And if they're $1 million, we can usually do it. We can usually get them to above 2 in 18 to 24 months, which is very exciting. The reason why that's exciting for me is what I know is when you double a conscious business, you triple its impact. And that's really why Shiftco exists, is we want to make a bigger impact in the world by helping conscious founders grow their business and their impact. What got me to this is I've had multiple large exits, including a NASDAQ IPO. I'm older than I look. I'm going to be 60 here in just a bit over a month. So I've been doing business for a long time. And in 2009, I sold a very successful business and started over with this crazy idea. There has to be a way to do good and make money. I started Share on Purpose. The first part of Share on Purpose is a speculator. It's like a purposeful Shark Tank. And we've invested in 14 different brands. An example of that is Your Izzy, which is the first zero waste makeup line and skincare line. And then we also have what we call the Cultivator. The Cultivator creates our own companies, and Succeed on Purpose was the first, followed by Ignite on Purpose. You can see there's an on purpose trend. And then in 2018, some of my clients asked me to create Shiftco, and followed that up with, we'll put up some of the money and help you do it. And Shiftco was born and launched in 2020. And now today, probably 60% of my time is spent in Shiftco because I was born to do it and I love doing it. So we're here to talk about focus. So I want to ask you guys a few questions. And Elizabeth, if you wouldn't mind helping me kind of read out the responses, that would sure be helpful.
Okay.
So my question is, when you think about focus, what comes to mind? And go ahead, you can either shout it out or you can drop it in the chat and Elizabeth will read it.
Discipline.
Discipline.
Intention.
Distraction.
Not scattered.
All of that is true. So you signed up for this event. Do you think you need to learn how to focus? What are the telling signs for you? Same thing. You can shout it out or you can drop it in the chat.
When I don't hear anything, not knowing what to focus on. Bright, shiny objects.
Squirrel.
Distractions. New technology. Procrastination. Some parts the person doesn't like, and to some degree, and not sure what to do about that.
All very true.
When every beep and bump interrupts me. Wondering if I'm focused on the right things. Stagnation.
Yeah. Excellent. All right, good. So Why do you think it seems hard to focus? I'm gonna give you a little bit of the science behind this, but I'd like to know what you think. Why does it seem so hard to focus?
A lot of
Uh,
competing interests, multitasking, so much to do.
For me, it's easy to focus on the pieces of my business that I love and hard to focus on the parts that I don't necessarily enjoy, which are the ones that
Ooh,
really need my attention. And I put my attention on the other parts, which are not the parts that generate the business.
oh, Susan, you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
That is absolutely correct.
Another person said something more urgent pops up.
Hmm. And then we move from kind of fire to fire. All of that is true. And one last question before we get into talking about some techniques. What have you tried and what's worked and what hasn't?
Well, this speaking for myself, I use various tools, one most significantly mind map, to help me kind of organize things I need to do and prioritize. And I focus on that. And somebody else just said has a full focus planner, time blocking. I've
And
tried
had,
closing the door and turning off the phone,
that's important.
saying no.
Yeah. So it sounds like we've tried different things and some work and some don't. And what I want to first start with is the science behind focus is that people focus differently. So if you learn a technique from some focus expert and you try that technique and it doesn't work for you, that doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It just means you focus differently. For example, Elizabeth uses a tool called mind map. Mind map drives me crazy. Like I just can't, I don't think that way, but it works really well for Elizabeth. And if I give her the tool that I use, which I have done because Elizabeth is on our board, it drives her crazy. But we've learned that there's nothing wrong with me because mind map doesn't work for me. And there's nothing wrong with Elizabeth because the tool that I use doesn't work for her. It just means that we think differently. The second part of research is generational, that if you're baby boomer, or in my case, I'm right on the line between baby boomer and Gen X. I'm very proud of that. I'm Gen X by about 4 months. Uh, the way that school was set up for us is the learning, the way that we learned forced us to think a certain way. Very shortly after that, the school system changed, which is kind of interesting right now since the education group at the in the U.S. is kind of being demolished. They actually changed the way students learned during the period of 1980 to 1992. And so folks that were in school systems during those periods in elementary and middle school learned a very different way. So, and then they changed it again, they changed the structure again. And then, of course, the states on top of that, and I'm being US specific, so apologies to my friends in Canada, but it's so you can see it generationally. You can see how each generation struggles differently with focus. So for those two reasons alone, that's going to explain 75 to 80% of why some things work for you and some things that don't. The last little bit is when you become a founder, the most disconcerting, difficult thing for you to do is to figure out your routine and your schedule. So when we have a job and we're in corporate America, we are stuck in their system, and whether we like it or not, Mondays are this and Tuesdays are this, and on Wednesday we do this. And so the school system, the corporate America system has set up its own routine, And whether, even if you're a top executive like I was, you're in a routine, you're in a system. And when you start a business, all of that goes away. And when I first became an entrepreneur in 2002, that's how long I've been doing this founder thing. For 2 years, I failed miserably. And the biggest part of my failure was I no longer had the routine, I no longer had the system, and I didn't know how to create a system that worked for me. So, for those three reasons, one, we're different, and what works for one person may not work for you. Secondly, depending on when you were educated and when you went through the school system, you were forced into learning modalities, and your brain was shaped and formed a certain way. And that's why there's big generalization changes between each generation, in addition to things like social media and technology. And third is, when you leave a job, whether you left a full-time job and started your business, or you have a part-time job and you have your business on the side, what you're facing is the fact that you don't have the structure and system. So hopefully that'll take a little bit of pressure off of you, that it's not your fault, but there is something that you can do about it. And that's where I really want to focus. Is I want to give you a way to think about it, and a couple of tools. I can also tell you that focus is the key to mastering the game of business. And in ShiftCo, we have a tool that I'm going to show you where we map where our members are. And one of the things that we map them on is their ability to focus, because our research, we have well over 400 members who have gone into ShiftCo. Our research shows us that the members that are most successful in doubling their business, they learn and adapt, whether they learn it from us or they find it someplace else, a way to focus, and they build habits around focus. So let me show you what that tool is. So this is what we call the performance coaching model. We adapted this from my portfolio of companies. My portfolio of companies share on purpose. We basically train leaders to run companies for us. And so when somebody gets employed in our portfolio, they have a job, but they go through this leadership training program. And the leadership training program trains them how to lead companies, and then they lead these companies that I start, which is really cool. So I get to start the company, and then I have leadership teams that have grown up in this system that lead the companies for us. It's like the coolest job in the world, which allows me to spend so much time in ShiftCo. So as of December 31st, 85.7% of our members have more than doubled their income. And part of it is because of this tool that I'm going to show you. Is we map where each founder is in 4 quadrants. And one end is when somebody's stuck and stationary. And we've all been there. I've been there. And I just feel like I'm just going in circles. And in the upper right, where we want them to migrate to, where we want our founders to migrate to, is where they are beginning to master the game of entrepreneurship. And by the way, I don't believe you can ever master entrepreneurship. I've been an entrepreneur since 2002. And although I have some mastery, I don't consider myself an expert. I just consider myself an expert at a few things of entrepreneurship. So the 2 drivers that we're looking at to move someone into mastery is how they take action to apply the knowledge. So let's say authentic marketing, and they learn authentic marketing. How do they act on that knowledge? That's where focus and habits really come into play. The second is willingness. This is a bigger aspect than I ever realized, because when somebody's resistant to learning something, they're like, oh, they learn how to build awareness for their business, but they don't want to do it. And so it's just kind of like they're dragging their feet and they're resisting. And so that willingness is really about desire to master. And ironically, when I go back to 2002, when I first started and failing miserably for 2 years, I literally was getting ready to quit my business and go take a job with the Stephen Covey organization. That's how desperate I was. I was just failing, and I was not used to failing, but I was failing as a founder. it really was hiring a coach that helped me understand that I had a lack of willingness to do some of the things that I needed to do and to learn some of the things that I needed to learn. I also was not good at focus and habits because I had spent an entire career, several decades in corporate America. And although I was a top executive, including being president of an internet company, there was a system that was set for me. Our board meetings were this, our management meetings were this. I met with my sales team on these days. And what I didn't realize is that when I started my own business, what went away, in addition to my title and paycheck, what also went away was the system. And I didn't know how to create it for myself. So I'm going to give you some tools to help you do that today. But back to this performance grid, when somebody is not taking action and they're not being focused and they're not developing good founder habits, and they're not willing to muscle down and really master the things you have to master. And there are some things you have to master, like it or not. You got to learn how to read financials. You do have to learn how to build awareness for your business. You've got to learn how to differentiate your business and talk about your business. You have to do that. Like you can't skip that. You can't outsource that. You can outsource accounting. You can outsource somebody posting on social media. You can outsource somebody managing your email and somebody managing your calendar. But there are certain elements, and there's 3 of them in particular, that you cannot outsource. You have to master these things. So when somebody is doubly not willing and doubly not taking action to apply the knowledge, they get in a loop. And I was in a loop. I was stagnant or stuck. On the upper quadrant, this is where somebody is, I want to do it. I'm willing to do it. Yes, 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 yes. I'm willing to do it. But they're not taking action. They're in what's known as FUD, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. That could be imposter syndrome. It could be, I don't want to put myself out there. It could be fear of rejection. And as we're going through this, I'd love for you to self-assess where you are in your business, because it may not be focus. It may be FUD. And you're overthinking it, and you're afraid to talk about what you're doing, or you try and it doesn't feel good, or you're afraid of rejection. It may be FUD. And if it's FUD, we got to work on FUD. It's not focus. If it's focus, we got to work on focus. On the bottom right, the way that this typically shows up is, hey, I'm taking action, but I'm not really going anywhere. And that's when your habits become very unfocused and your behavior is very inconsistent. And sometimes it's learning how to focus, but sometimes it's learning how to stop doing the things that aren't moving your business forward. So this is when somebody is not just stagnant or stuck. They're doing a lot, but they're not really going anywhere. They're on this treadmill. Well, I'm doing stuff, but I'm not really moving my business forward. And then in the upper right-hand quadrant, where we work very, very hard to help our members get to, is where their willingness comes, because we're working on that FUD, and we're working on how to take action in a constructive way. What happens, and we can see it in their eyes, we can see it in their business, their motivation starts to go up. And now they're like, hey, I'm getting traction. This feels good. And ultimately, they start to become very driven. And once they're in that upper right-hand box, boom, they're going to break through the resistance. They've developed the right habits to focus. Their willingness is back. They recognize that fear is just part of the entrepreneurial journey, and away you go. Before we talk about the focus aspect and getting into this mastery box, I want to see if anybody has any questions or comments about that.
Me?
Go ahead, Al,
Maybe,
say that again.
yeah, that might just be too young of a meme here. I see myself reflected in this talk.
Yeah, so
I was
Al,
going to say that.
So when you say reflected, what does that mean?
This is just speaking to my experience. I have experienced all these things.
And do you find yourself moving between the different boxes and not able to keep yourself in the upper right-hand box?
I mean, throughout my life, yeah. Like this is a description of like the last 25 years.
Okay. Anybody else have a comment or a question on it?
I think I definitely see FUD in me more than any of the others, obviously, but because of a lot of failures, or for lack of a better word, things that didn't go right, I get more uncertain and more doubtful rather than trying to consider it a lesson.
Yeah. And you got to make failure your friend as an entrepreneur. Failure's your friend. And you got to get comfortable with it. There's no way around it. You're going to fail more than you're going to succeed as an entrepreneur. And you've got to get into that didn't work, let's try this. That didn't work, let's try this. That didn't work, let's try this. And not have all the emotion around it, because it's the emotion that grows the FUD. And when the FUD is growing, you're going to appear unfocused, and worse, you're going to get busy doing stuff, which is actually going to make the business go the wrong direction, as opposed to getting really clear energetically and saying, that didn't work. What do I want to try next? Let me evaluate the data to figure out where to go next so I don't waste any energy.
Terry, the group has pretty much agreed with Al in the chat. And one person said, so much FUD.
Yeah. Yeah. And so founder has FUD. And not only do you have FUD when you're just starting it, every business phase, we have these 7 phases. You've probably seen them on our website that we help our members navigate through. Every phase, you're going to experience a different type of FUD. And sometimes it's fear of failure. Sometimes it's fear of rejection. Sometimes it's need to know. Sometimes it's fear of success. And there are other ones. Sometimes it's not good enough. Sometimes it's self-worth. And so the FUD part of it is just part of the journey. And part of what we help our members do is we help them identify what is the particular FUD that you're challenged with. And then we give solutions in that area. So it might not be focus. It could be, when we're in FUD, we're unfocused because we're either disengaging or we're over engaging because action makes us, quote unquote, feel better. It makes us think we're doing something, when in reality, what we're doing is complicating our business and making it tougher. Any other questions or comments before we talk specifically about focus?
I guess one of the things that I've been struggling with is the FUD thing causes me to maybe work on things that or start things. Like I say, okay, well, what did I learn? And then I end up starting something that maybe turns into this huge project, and then I've got too many projects on my plate. So just
That's
a
right.
comment there,
Yeah, and that's where you use your mentor here, Gwen. Your mentor can call you on that. You can say, hey, Tanya, can you sit down with me? I'm thinking about turning right and, doing this thing over here. And your mentor will be like, oh, time out. We don't have this little bucket over here done. Let's take you back over here. So, given that you're a SHIFCO member, that's a great way for you to use your mentor. Your mentors are great kind of guideposts. They help keep you on track so that you're not going all over the place. And then the second thing you'll learn in the pathways that you're going to be going through next is how to measure where your marketing is working and where it's not working. And that will help you focus. Other questions or comments before we go a little deeper on the focus side?
One person just talked about flipping back and forth between FUD and being unfocused, and the lack of focus driving more FUD.
Yeah. So that is very common. And what that does is put you in the stagnant and stuck, and that you become a stationary hurricane. So stationary hurricane, having come from Florida, are the most dangerous. They can be a level 1 hurricane. And if they're a stationary hurricane, they'll do more damage than a category 5 hurricane because they stay stuck longer. And one of this most recent hurricane that hit and went all the way up into the Carolinas, it was a category. It hit as a 3, and then it went down to a 1, but it did more damage as a category 1 throughout Florida, Georgia, and North Carolina than it did where it hit as a cat 3. So that point is learning to recognize when FUD is affecting you, and there's a great little training program on the Shifco YouTube page called the Success Switch that will help you unlock the FUD. And then the second is learning how to focus, which I'm going to be giving you some tools for that today, so that you can get yourself unstuck. But if it's a FUD issue, which is why that Success Switch training will help you, you actually have to get your brain to unswitch from FUD and turn on the Success Switch before the focus techniques will work. Okay, so why we don't focus, there's 4 reasons. One, we haven't learned how as an entrepreneur, quite honestly. What you might have been a great focus person in corporate America, that does not translate to being an entrepreneur. So just know that if you were great in great in your corporate job and you were like, I never had these problems there, don't think you have to go back and get a job. You're just in a system, and the system is running you, whether you realize it or not. When you're a founder, you have to learn how to build your own system. The second thing is we think we can't, and now we're telling ourselves a story. Oh, I have ADHD. Oh, I'm not good at this focus thing. And we have all these stories, the I can't stories that we've adapted, particularly if you've experienced some failure in your business and it's kind of gnawing at you. You develop these stories to explain away. Well, I'm just not good at that. And, I don't know how. And that those stories are very, very dangerous because you talk yourself out of what it is that you need to do. The third reason is there is too much to do when you start a business. Even when you just start, you've got to get a new LinkedIn profile. Maybe you need a logo, website. You got to get your email set up. I don't even know how to get my email set up. Oh my God. And then there's this. And then do I need a phone number for my business? Should I have an office? Should I have somebody do my accounting? How do I do my taxes? And then, oh, by the way, what are my services? How do I price them? How do I get new clients? There is a lot to figure out. And it doesn't matter whether you're starting at 0, whether you're at 5K a month, 10K a month, 30K a month, there is too much to do compared to when you had a job. And then last but not least is we use action to feel better. And that's that far right that we talked about is, I don't feel good because I failed. So I'm just going to get busy doing stuff, and I'm going to do lots of stuff, and I'm going to try this, I'm going to try this. And then you don't really know what's working, but you're in lots of motion, but nothing is working. So I'm not going to get into all 4 of these today because we don't have time, but I am going to give you a couple of tools to get you started. So first of all, focus requires 3 things, and all 3 things must exist. First, you have to know what to focus on. And that is a very important piece. And we call it business simple. At the end of the day, there's only 2 things you really need to focus on. And I mean, you have to focus. You've got to generate demand. I got to get new clients. And you've got to manage what's known as supply. Supply is how much time, what resources do I need, and how do I scale the business, okay? Whether it's a product business or a service business. So you can break it down. Do I need more revenue and more clients, or do I need to focus more on the time, resources, and scale side? So rather than making a giant list, just boil it down to those 2 things. Which of these 2 things need focus right now? The second is you have to develop some focus skills. I'm going to give you some tools today and tell you how you can access more of them. And what I want to tell you is you can learn to do it. I learned how to do it. Elizabeth, I know you learned how to do it. But don't assume that what worked for me works for you. Don't assume what worked for Elizabeth will work for you. You've got to learn how to focus in a way that works for you. And then lastly is you need a degree of accountability. And that's why I said as Shifco members, this is a great way to use your mentor, is to get that accountability check-in that, it feels like I'm off track, I'm spinning again. And if you're not in Shifco, you need some kind of an accountability partner to help keep you on track. So those are the 3 things that you need. And sorry for my dogs barking. This will stop in a minute. So now we're going to focus on how can I develop focus. And what you're going to see is I'm not going to give you an exact way to do it, because what I know is we're different people and the tools that work for me are not going to work for you. But what I am going to do is I'm going to talk about knowing where to focus. I'm going to talking about knowing how to focus in a more universal way. And then I'm also going to talk about how to invest time. Okay. So where to focus? So where to focus is first supply and demand. So the first thing you've got to identify is, do I need more revenue and clients first, or do I need more time and resources? Most of the time it's revenue and clients, until you get a little bit larger and then you have issues on the supply side. So you got to start there. And then you have to say, where do I want to be at the end of this year? If my business is here, where do I actually want to be? Like, you have to have a target in mind. And you can break that target down into a couple of early metrics, but you got to set a goal. This isn't just business planning 101. And by the way, no matter what your goal is, you're going to never hit it. Sometimes you're going to exceed it, and sometimes you're going to miss it big. It's not about hitting the goal. It's knowing where you're going. And so I'll say, this is the goal that I want to hit this year, and I break it down. And then I'm super honest with myself. Where am I now? Do I have what I need? What do I need to learn to get me from where I am to where I want to go? So doing this exercise back in 2004, when I decided I wasn't going to take the Stephen Covey job and I was going to stick to this crazy thing of entrepreneurship, I did this exercise and I said, okay, I want to replace my income. And so I need my revenue to be here. Where am I now? Wow, I got a long way to go. Okay, now, what do I actually need to learn how to do? Well, I need to learn how to get clients. I need to learn how to price my services. And I just made a list of what I needed to learn. And then I worked on one of those things a piece at a time. And the part of that piece at a time was really my first big breakthrough that led to now I create and grow companies and do all this really cool stuff. Is what you don't want to do is you don't want to be working on 10 things at one time. You want to isolate a thing at a time. So I made my list, and I think there were like 10 big things that I needed to do. And I think my business was maybe earning, $15,000 a year. And I said, okay, the first thing I've got to do is I've got to learn how to get clients. And I broke that down and said, okay, I've got to do some networking, which I hated, but I'm going to do it. And then I've got to learn how to talk to people about what I did. And so I just broke it down and I just said all these other accounting and setting up my email and all this kind of stuff. I'm just going to set all that aside right now. And I'm just going to focus on this one thing. So you basically take one thing at a time and you muscle down on that one thing and you learn that one thing. And you can break it down like this. So where do I want to be in a year? Target is, what do I actually have to focus on to get there? That's that list. The third thing is I set a priority for the week of that target list. What do I really have to do this week to move down the field? And then I focus on what I call the daily do's. And the daily do's are just a couple of things that I know I have to do every week to hit that priority. So if you just do this exercise and you say supply or demand, okay, where do I want to be in a year? Focus on, make the list, choose one thing, and obsessively focus on that one thing. It doesn't matter whether you're using mind maps, spreadsheets, a project management tool, the roadmap that we give our members, it doesn't matter, but you focus this week on that one thing that ties to your target, that ties to your goals. Before we talk about how to use time, I want to see if there's any questions on this piece so far.
I have a question again.
Yeah, go ahead.
So as far as what I need to focus on, I realized that maybe I need to focus on following up and collecting my list, making sure I have like the real target list. Like does that sound like what you're looking at? I mean, it feels to
Yeah,
me every
Gwen,
time I look on my list that I'm doing something that's not getting me anywhere, but because
exactly.
it's so tedious, but it's actually the right thing to
Exactly.
do first.
Yeah, so the key is to not do lots of different kinds of things. The key is to say, this week I'm going to work on growing awareness of my business, and everything this week is related to that. And then at the end of the week, you're like, did it work? Did it not? What worked? What didn't? Stop doing these things, start doing these things. You don't jump over here and say, we're going to redo the website, or I'm going to go call on these people over there. You stay prioritized around week to week, tied to that target list we talked about, with a vision of your goal for the year. Now, that goal for the year should become like a light, and not beating yourself up if I never hit any of my goals. Sometimes, occasionally, I'll blow them through the roof, and other times I miss them by a mile. But I don't beat myself up for that. It just becomes the light of where I'm headed. And if I miss it by a mile, I just roll it into the next year. And it's like, not a problem. I'll roll it into next year, and I don't beat myself up, because I know that I'm focused on my priorities, but different things happen and I'm not going to beat myself up. But it's like a light. So your 1 year goal becomes the light. Never beat yourself up if you hit it or don't. The target is the list of what are the things I truly have to focus on. Pick one. And for this whole week, that's going to become my priority. And whatever tools you use are necessary, relevant, because you're going to use however your brain works. But it's really the focus and the habit building of focus that causes you to move the ball down the field. So for you, that conversation we had this week on demand gen and those techniques that we came up with, boom, your whole week should be dedicated. That should be your priority. Don't allow yourself to go squirrel and go over here with something that's going to move you in an opposite direction. We got to move the ball down the field. Does that make sense, Gwen? Okay, other questions? Okay, so the next area is learning how to invest time. One of the mistakes that founders make is we spend time rather than invest time. And one of the things that a mentor taught me, I was a little further in my business and things were finally working and the business was starting to scale, and I was working way too hard, was making it way too hard. And this mentor, who's a very successful entrepreneur, taught me this trick of how to invest time and to think of time as an investment. And so what you can do is you can say, all right, how much money do I want to make? Let's just say it's $200,000 a year. Divide that by hours that you have in a year for working a reasonable time as an entrepreneur. All right, that's $100 an hour. Every half hour, $2. If you say I want to make 200,000 divided by 2,000, it's $100 an hour. Every half hour block worth $2. And I began to all of a sudden go having 2-hour meetings when they could actually be 30 minutes. I'm spending 1 hour on that activity when it could actually be 15 minutes. And all of a sudden, when I thought about investing, I spent $50 of my time investing in posting on social media. Did I get $50 worth of return? No. Maybe I should outsource that. But I spent an hour networking and I did get leads from that. And that was $100 of investment of my time. Now, all of a sudden, it's like, now that's a really good activity. So it gives you a quantifiable way to really think. So pick a number, again, 200,000, 100,000, how much do you want to make? Divided by 2,000 hours. That's how much 1 hour is worth in terms of as an investor. And break it in half again for 30-minute blocks. And then everything you're doing, you're saying this amount of time. And I'll give you a great example of this. I've got lots of personal dynamics happening right now. We're caregivers for my uncle, and he's getting ready to go into hospice, and it's a very emotional time for me. I'm going to try to hold it together, and I'm I'm burned out, because I'm managing these portfolio businesses and I'm managing this very personal situation. And so this morning I had 2 meetings canceled and I had an hour and a half. I said to myself, how do I want to invest that hour and a half? And you're going to laugh. And I said, what I really want to do is I want to take a nap. And I invested $150. Let's just say if it's $50 for a half hour, I invested 150 hours in taking a nap. And man, when my alarm went off and I got back up, I felt like $1,000,000. So that was a good investment. So it's not just investing in posting and networking, and sometimes you have to invest in taking a freaking break. But because I think of it as an investment, I don't feel bad. Sometimes it's like I'm feeling like a failure and I'm just going to take an hour and put my $100. I have this little stack of these fake $100 bills, and I'm plopping down $100 on sitting outside and petting my dog. But I don't feel bad. I don't feel guilty because I consider it an investment. What those times do when you invest in taking a break, taking a nap, going for a walk, say, now, okay, great. I've done those things for myself. My cup is full. Now I'm going to invest an hour, $100, and I am going to network like crazy for an hour. I'm going to go on Alignable. I'm going to go on Facebook groups, and I'm going to do that. And I'm going to step back and I'm going to go, wow, that was a good investment of that $100. So learning how to invest time is a game changer. You can also use this little chart here. And this is called the energy impact chart. This is kind of out there. This isn't something we created. It's kind of in the public domain. And energy is how much I like it. So the top part is I really love doing this. The bottom is I don't like doing it. And then impact is how impactful is it in my business. So what you can do is you can plot your investments and you can say, do I catch myself doing things that drain my energy that are low impact? Sometimes posting on social media is low impact and it's draining you because you don't feel like people are responding. Outsource it. Find another way to do it. You don't have to always do that. What you're looking for is you're looking for the things that are high impact, high energy. For me, building webinars like this, high impact, high energy. So what I do is I reward myself for doing the things that are high impact, low energy. Again, networking, it's high impact. I don't really love it because I'm an introvert. But what I'll do is I'll say, okay, I'm going to invest an hour or two in networking, but I'm going to follow it up with a high energy, high impact thing like building a new webinar. And so now it's called stacking, habit stacking. And so now I stack something I love to do, which is building webinars and content, with something that I have to do because it's high impact, but I don't really love it, like networking. I stack them together and I say, all right, here's $100 on networking. And then I'm going to follow that up with $100. This is a great trick, by the way, for helping these little fake $100 bills. I'm going to follow that up with this thing that I love to do. And then you can take it even further and say, I should be doing things that are high energy, high impact. I should delegate things that are high impact that drain my energy over time. Sometimes you can't delegate them. So it could be do delegate. You definitely want to do things that are fulfilling. The more you're in the do area, the better. And then quite honestly, the things that are low energy, low impact, you need to drop them all together. Just stop doing them. I can't tell you how many times I've been working with a founder and they're like, oh, I got to redo my website. I'm like, who's bought off your website? Nobody. Then don't worry about it. Drop it. Because right now you're not at a point where your website's going to help. So quite honestly, I've built businesses with zero website. I just built it with a social media page. So you've got to use this to either kind of stack, like I said, an activity that you really need to do, like for me, networking or being on a podcast, I really need to do that with something I love to do. You stack them back to back, and then you get like this little dopamine hit that helps you move forward. I've got one other thing to talk about, but I just want to tie this together. What we're looking for is we want to do more of what we love. And then you want to delegate high impact items that you don't enjoy. And if you can't afford to delegate, stack them. Like, so just like I said, if I can't afford to delegate somebody to do that for me, I'm going to stack it with the thing that I love to do. And then you got to drop anything that doesn't add positive impact. I have one more tool to share with you, but before I do, are there any questions so far?
I don't
Me
have a
again.
question, Terry, but I was going to say that what keeps coming back to me is like for me, I love mind map, and I get a dopamine hit from using mind map. It's fun to use. And the same with Active Campaign. It took me a little while to become an addict to Active Campaign, but now I love, kind of tracking my lead generation proposal work in Active Campaign. So I think picking the good tools that are scalable, that will give you discipline, and if you have fun using them, that also helps with work that maybe doesn't turn you on, but using the tool is fun.
And so that's a great point is, people tell, oh, you should use this tool and this tool. And before I know it, founders got all these tools and I'm like, are you really enjoying that? No, drop them. Find a tool that for whatever reason you enjoy using and focus on that. You don't need 10 tools. You got to find the one tool that's actually going to move you forward and that you actually will enjoy learning to use. And for example, TikTok, everybody's telling me, Terry, you should be on TikTok. You're a speaker. I don't want to learn another social media platform, so I'm not going to get into TikTok. And if somebody on my team wants to put my videos on TikTok, great, but I'm not learning. I'm 60. I'm not learning it, right? So you don't need to follow the latest trend and have all these things. You got to find the tools that you love. Elizabeth, great example with Mind Map and Active Campaign. They work for you. You like using them. Great. If you don't, all it is one more thing you have to learn. Other questions, suggestions, or comments before I go into one more tool?
I guess one of the things that I struggle with is trying to decide if what I've invested is going to have a positive impact later. It feels like I was just spinning my wheels and I got this big proposal or whatever, I responded to a client that took a lot of my time and I can't decide if it was worth it or not. I guess I just have to understand some things are more long game.
Yeah, some are long games. Some of it's trial and error. But the thing that works for me with that, Gwen, is I actually journal and I ask myself, is this a good use of my time? And I listen to my intuition. It sounds crazy, but it really does work for me. I believe that our soul really knows where we should be spending our time. And so I just pull out my journal and say, is this a step I should take? And I've even got a little thing that says, and then I also have, what would it look like if it were easy? And I have that up there and it's like, okay, should I do this? Should I not? And I journal and ask myself questions and I listen to myself and I write the responses. And that's how I decide whether or not I should go after a client, speak at an event, do an RFP, yada, yada, yada. So that's a great way to work around that. Any other questions or comments before we go into the last tool? Last tool is, I call it the athlete's advantage. And if you've been in Shifco for a while, you've heard this before, but it's the kind of thing it bears repeating. Several years ago, I was asked to be on the board of a company that trained former professional athletes how to start businesses. Boy, that was a perfect job for me since I love sports. Go Gators. Gators are going to be in the men's game tonight, so I'm pulling for them. And entrepreneurship. So it was like a dream come true. And they handed out this research study that said that former athletes, high school, college, and pro athletes are 3 times more successful as a founder than non-athletes. And I was like, what? and by this time I've obviously been a successful entrepreneur. And I was like, why is that? They didn't have an answer for it, but they were 3 times more successful as a founder. And I just went home and I started researching and digging and thinking. And I remember when I hit on it. To be an athlete, you have to learn how to make moves versus being in motion. Motion is when we're doing stuff, right? as an athlete, you cannot be successful as an athlete with your practices, with the games, if you just do stuff. What you have to learn how to do is you can't waste energy as an athlete. So athletes train their mind and body. So it's a mind-body connection, how to go from one place to another. And they'll set goals. So I want to, run my mile in this, or I want to lift this. And so when they go to the gym, they're thinking about the moves they have to make to move the ball down the field. And so you can ask yourself, are you in motion? If you're in motion, you're just doing stuff. You're not really making moves. And moves are effort with intention. So that technique we talked about of know where you're going, know what your target is, that you're working on this one thing and focus, that is effort with intention. And you can literally break it down. They're measurable. So I want to be here at this point. And you want to find those daily do's that move your business forward so that you're not doing a lot of different things. You're really focused on one thing, maybe two things that day, that week, that are going to move your business forward, and dedicate time each day to making moves. And you can train yourself to do that. And the question I ask myself is, will this action move me to my goal? Yes or no? No gray, no maybe, no I don't know. That's my journal prompt. Will this action, will this RFP, will this proposal move me to my goal? Yes or no? And if it's a no, I drop it. If it's a yes, I do it. Period. End of story. And that discipline will help you move forward. So I'll wrap up. We provide tools and training. If you're in the launch or shape phase, the ShiftCo membership is $235 a month. There's no long-term commitment. In addition to giving you all of the business training, you're going to get focus tools, mindset training, prosperity, confidence building. That's it. That's how we work. We'd love to have you join us. And you can also attend any of our free events. So Authentic Marketing, April 8th, is going to show you how to grow awareness of your business. The Conscious Business Forecast on April 14th is research on why this is the best time to build a business that makes the world better. And this was a sampling of some of our focus and habit building techniques. And I'm going to stop the recording